Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on this Friday ahead of the divisional round in the National Football League. I'm Craig Mish here with you for another round of the show. It is a Friday. It's a football Friday. 4 games on the slate this week. It's the final time in the NFL season that we're going to have 4 games, so enjoy it. We'll preview them. Coming up, Warren Sharp will join us. We've got the Sharp Report a little bit later in the program, also previewing some other things going on in the National Football League. Jim Gazzale joins us courtesy of Legal Sports Report with the very latest in the sports betting. And also our buddy Gilbert McGregor. We haven't checked in with Gilbert in a bit. National Basketball Association, of course, hot and heavy right now and through the rest of the season. So stay with us for that here on NewsWire. And as we get ready for the big games this weekend, just a reminder, we've got Pharrell Coast to Coast coming up 3 o'clock Eastern. And all weekend long previews on Saturday and on Sunday with our in-game live programming. All of our great hosts, Pro Football Today. Folks, if you have not seen our coverage throughout the year, it is second to none. So I hope you will check it out this weekend. And also our fantasy football content as well, which still rolls on, by the way, Saturday and Sunday morning. But we begin with coaching news in the National Football League. And finally, we got some news on Mike Vrabel since he's been let go of the Tennessee Titans. I haven't heard all that much about him, but finally looks like he is getting back at least into the coaching circle here. The Chargers are interviewing Mike Vrabel. That could be the next destination potentially. Falcons and Seahawks also interested in talking to Vrabel, although we have been talking about the fact that Bill Belichick got a second interview with the Falcons as well. Mike Kafka, Giants offensive coordinator, is interviewing with the Seattle Seahawks today. They have an opening with Pete Carroll basically leaving or staying, or maybe a little bit of both with the Seahawks organization. Not so sure right now. John Harbaugh, by the way, with his first comments on Mark Andrews this week, says that his status is still up in the air. He hasn't played since his last game on November the 16th. If he can't play, Isaiah Likely would once again start at tight end for them. And the Arizona Cardinals have fired their CFO and 2 vice presidents. Just a lot of layoffs going on with the Cardinals right now. By the way, former head coach Cliff Kingsbury interviewing, interestingly enough, with the Chicago, former coach with Caleb Williams there. We'll see if Kingsbury ends up in Chicago as well. One of the marquee matchups this weekend is going to be going on this weekend in Detroit, where the Lions got their first playoff win at home in what feels like 100 years, a little bit less than that. They have a chance now with a win to advance to the NFC Championship next week, which is sort of insane when you think about how far the Lions have come in such a short period of time. Warren Sharp has some thoughts on this matchup between the Bucs and Lions. Here's the Sharp Report.
Last week, the Detroit Lions pulled off a key home victory over the Rams, and they're set to do it again against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the point spread indicates they'll have even more success, laying upwards of 6.5 points at current market prices. The issue that I have with that point spread, however, is the fact that this team really shelled up last week. And let's look at the numbers to show why. In the first quarter, they came out on first downs with a 60% pass rate. And when they did run the ball, they ran it from a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. Those runs gained 5.7 yards per carry. As a result of this high pass rate and runs from 3 wide receiver sets, giving the defense something to think about, they had 0 third downs. However, in the second half of the game, a 60% pass rate on first down dipped all the way down to 22% pass rate. That means they ran the ball on 78% of their first downs in the second half. The Rams had 86% of those runs into loaded boxes. They were playing heavier fronts because the Lions were in heavier personnel and they had been running a lot on first down, so it became very predictable. What happened to those runs? They gained 0.6 yards per carry on first down runs in the second half. And as a result of bad first down play calling and getting very conservative, being suboptimal, their average distance to go on third down in the second half for the Lions was 9.8 yards. And they converted just 20% of those third downs. I was very surprised that Ben Johnson played so conservatively with a lead in the second half. It really allowed the Rams to get back into this game. If they try to do the same thing this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have an even better run defense than did the Rams, they're going to be in for a world of problems, and that could allow Baker Mayfield, even if he's down at halftime, to get back into this game in the second half. Ben Johnson and the Detroit Lions must continue to stay aggressive. Whatever got them the lead early, they need to continue utilizing that late and ensure that they make a trip to the NFC Championship.
All right, thanks, Warren. We'll check back with Warren a little bit later in the program for a preview of the other games in divisional weekend. In college football, Ohio State, they're set to hire Bill O'Brien. You may remember him, of course, the head coach of the Houston Texans, also spending time with New England, head coach of Penn State. He's going to be their new offensive coordinator, although our associate producer today, Michael Cohen, doesn't seem to be too happy about that from reading the notes that he has set for me. I can't read them on the air. Sorry. As I mentioned, Cliff Kingsbury expected to interview for the Chicago Bears opening, and we'll see if that ends up working out. As I mentioned, his relationship with Caleb Smith could be a good one there. Cam McCormick, this is a crazy story. Cam McCormick at the University of Miami has been granted, folks, get this, his 9th year of eligibility to play football at the University of Miami. He was redshirted back in 2016 at Oregon, missed with injuries for 3 years, played at Oregon in 2022, went to Miami in 23, and now he's coming back for 2024. He must have watched Old School over and over again to want to get a 9th year. I can't figure this one out. And also, ex-Washington quarterback Austin Mack has transferred to Alabama. Washington, of course, with a new head coach this season. In basketball, the NBA is also postponing tonight's game between the Warriors and Mavericks. The sad, untimely death of their assistant coach, Dejan Milojevic. Very sad story there. A second straight game being postponed. LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo have finished as the leaders in the NBA's All-Star fan voting. Of course, we're going to see both of them in the upcoming All-Star game. South Florida with a big win in college basketball last night. They upset number 10 Memphis, and unfortunately, this TCU women's basketball team has had so many injuries that they can't even play any of their games. They have to forfeit another game tomorrow. So sorry for the Horned Frogs organization there on the women's side in college basketball. In baseball, well, there's not a ton happening with free agent signings. Don't ask me why. I have no answers. But the Chicago White Sox potentially looking at a new ballpark in a new location. It's known as the 78, I guess, in the South Loop of the city. I'm not familiar with the area, but I know that that stadium's been around since 1991, and they do need a new one. Adam Wainwright, Uncle Charlie, is going to join Fox Sports. He's been doing a good job broadcasting many years. While playing now, he's just going to be a broadcaster. The 2016 FIFA World Cup will be held in Dallas at AT&T Stadium. Per sources, this is expected, and the Oilers beat the Kraken and extended their winning streak in the NHL to 12 games, which ties their franchise record and also ties the 1967-68 Montreal Canadiens record for the longest winning streak from a Canadian team. I knew that going into the show today without my producers even telling me. Just kidding.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted them out. They still wanted them gone.
Mike Shula,
Mike Shula was a disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move
by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Last year, the Purdue Boilermakers upset by the 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. Is history going to repeat itself?
Purdue is capable of winning 6 games in the NCAA tournament, but the fact is, until Purdue proves that it's capable of not just advancing, but advancing far in the bracket in March, this is going to be the storyline. And I've said that to you throughout the offseason.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Our guest today, courtesy of Sporting News, is Gilbert McGregor. We're going to chop it up amongst some NBA news and notes. We're getting close to the All-Star break. Can't wait to get into it all with Gilbert, so let's bring him in here on the show as we dive into the latest topics in the National Basketball Association. Hey, Gilbert. Happy weekend. Thanks for coming on.
Happy Friday, Craig. I'm glad to be back.
All right, so what's going on here with the Indiana Pacers? Are they going to try to get Dale Davis, Antonio Davis, Reggie Miller? I mean, the Pacers going for it here? When was the last time this happened? 10 years ago? 20 years ago? I understand they've had some good seasons in between, and I know Halliburton's hurt too. He'll come back, but legitimately making a trade to try and help themselves here a little bit with Pascal Siakam. I guess they feel it's time to reward the fans for so many of these tough years.
This is certainly a big step in the right direction for the Pacers. I think back to the history of this organization and the franchise, and you said it. It's been about 10 years since they were making the Heat sweat late in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Getting Pascal Siakam from the Toronto Raptors means a lot for both teams involved, obviously, because of the caliber of player that Siakam is. But when you start with what it means for Indiana, it's the ultimate vote of confidence and belief in Tyrese Halliburton, that he is primed to make a superstar leap, and also that they want to legitimize what they've done this year in catching people by surprise. I know we talked a lot about the Pacers' defense or lack thereof this season. Bringing in Siakam helps them with that big-time issue, and it also forms an all-star level duo between him and Tyrese Halliburton. You look at the Eastern Conference and you know that it's really the Celtics and then the Bucks and the 76ers at that top tier, but the Pacers making this move puts them right next to the Heat, who were in the finals last year, the Knicks and the Cavaliers. And I think now wouldn't be surprised to see if the Pacers win a playoff series, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're not done dealing. So the Pacers are building a team around Tyrese Halliburton, who will be 24 years old in about a month's time, and they're going to be reckon with in the Eastern Conference for a while.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that Indiana at this point is one of the teams to watch in the Eastern Conference. Now, unfortunately, Gilbert, we got a shocking story this week which affected the NBA family and all of us who cover the NBA. As an assistant coach for a team in the NBA, passed away very unexpectedly. The Warriors and Mavericks have been postponed again. And this story, Gilbert, certainly hits hard, not just with the NBA and the teams, and certainly his family, but with the media as well, because when something like this happens, you just don't know how to respond. You don't know how to talk about it because it's just so shocking.
It is. It's heartbreaking. My heart goes out to the family of Dejan Milojevic, his wife, his 2 children, and then you take a step back and his basketball family, the Warriors franchise. He's been with them for 3 seasons now. His heart attack that he suffered happened when he was with the team during a team event. So recognizing that, and then thinking about the beauty of basketball and what we take from this game, and the fact that it's a global sport, and the fact that he's made his presence felt with the players that he's coached in Serbia, in Montenegro, in the United States since coming over here and coaching. It turns out that everybody's greatly impacted by it. And it just shows how special of a person and special of a coach he was to impact the number of lives that he's impacted. I know Steve Kerr called it an unfathomable loss, and that's exactly the best way to describe it. It's tough. It reminds you the preciousness of life and that it's much more important than the game. And I think that's why I'm glad that they were able to postpone the Warriors few games, and they can take a step back from things and recalibrate and get back to action next week and play in their fallen coach's honor.
Yeah, makes sense there. Certainly tough story to do on any program, let alone the family, as you mentioned, devastating. All right, so how do we move on from there? We get back to the court. The Nuggets play the Celtics. This is a possible preview of a championship game, I suppose. They don't get to play each other all that much during the regular season, so let's dive in. Celtics 6.5-point favorites over the Denver Nuggets. Boston is 20-0 at home this year. I mean, that is a staggering number. How do you bet against that? Can we make a case for Denver covering at least tonight? But how about winning outright too? Can we play both of those sides?
When you say 20-0 at home, Craig, it doesn't even sound real. The Celtics team is halfway to history. I know the Celtics in the late 80s went 40-1 over the course of an entire season. This team really looks unbeatable at home, and they haven't been. They haven't lost at home since the Eastern Conference Finals last year. The Nuggets are the defending champs, though, when we talk about that. They have Nikola Jokic as the man in the middle, the reigning Finals MVP. So anytime you have him, you have an opportunity. That being said, they've lost 4 in a row in Boston. They haven't won in Boston since 2019. I like the Celtics in this game. I think the Nuggets can keep it close, though, because the Celtics have been getting tested a lot at home. The Nuggets haven't played since Tuesday, so they will be well rested and haven't had to travel that much because on Tuesday they played in Philadelphia. So I wouldn't mind, the Nuggets keeping it within 6 points and maybe suffering a close loss. But I do think the Celtics have continued to keep their impeccable, flawless home record up. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's because Kristaps Porzingis has a big night.
It's 20-0. It's a number you don't see a lot in the NBA, almost never. So they've moved the Brooklyn-LA game to the national game tonight on Friday Night NBA. Lakers are 6.5-point favorites over the Brooklyn Nets. 227 is the total. Lakers still maintain, Gilbert, to be that team that, as we saw in that play-in tournament, they can win on any given day, look like an NBA champion on any given day. But look, this is not a team that, let's be real, that's going to push that hard in the regular season at times. And that's the dynamic that's almost impossible to figure out with a lot of teams, by the way, Gilbert, in the NBA. We've seen so many blowouts where the home team cares, the road team does not. We just don't know going into the game. Do the Lakers care tonight? Do they want to beat down Brooklyn?
One thing that I've noticed about this Lakers team, whether it's the play-in tournament or the in-season tournament or some of the games we've seen this year, is that they do care a little bit more when it's a nationally televised game. But at the same time, a lot of times when we expect them to do well, that's when they let us down, like they did against the Heat on national television a few weeks ago. Now, they're coming off of an impressive statement win on national TV on Wednesday over the Mavericks, and they're trending upwards right now in a season of ups and downs. I look at the Nets, they're trending downward. They've lost 9 of their last 10 games. They're kind of struggling to find their way right now, and I think that bodes well for the Lakers winning this one and winning handily. The Nets have struggled with perimeter scorers recently, and D'Angelo Russell is starting to find his way again since re-entering the starting lineup. So I think D'Angelo Russell could have a big game against his former team in Brooklyn. And I think the Lakers maybe continue to trend upwards. This is an important time for them. They don't leave Los Angeles until the end of the month. They do play a quote-unquote road game against the Clippers next week, but they actually don't have to travel for a while. So if they can take advantage of playing at home and maybe turn things around as we approach the trade deadline and All-Star Weekend, this would be a great time to make another statement.
Yeah, fair enough. By the way, I probably should know this. I know a little bit about the All-Star game this year, but like it feels like if I don't pay attention, Gilbert, they're changing something this year. Either there's the dunk contest or the way that they're picking the players on the teams. Is there a new wrinkle this year coming up next month?
A new old wrinkle, I guess you could say. The All-Star draft is no more. We're going back to Eastern Conference and Western Conference All-Stars. So whoever we see voted in the game, they'll be playing with the rest of the people that represent the same conference as them, and they'll take the floor in Indianapolis at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So now the Pacers have 2 stars on their team, and they'll be hosting the All-Star game, and Tyrese Halliburton will almost certainly be an All-Star starter in front of his home fans.
All right, so cool. I always liked the way that they used to do it there. So I'm a fan of that, and certainly a fan of you, Gilbert. Thank you again for coming on NewsWire here, and my best to you this weekend, and we'll catch up again next week.
Thanks, Craig. Have a great weekend.
All right, Gilbert McGregor, Sporting News, covering the National Basketball Association. Coming up next here on the show, we're going to dive into the very latest on sports wagering. We've got some news, updated news in Massachusetts, and Jim Gazzale, courtesy of Legal Sports Report, is going to join us next on NewsWire. So don't go away.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted them out. They still wanted them gone.
Mike Shula,
Mike Shula was a disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out in the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Last year, the Purdue Boilermakers upset by the 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. Is history going to repeat itself?
Purdue is capable of winning 6 games in the NCAA tournament, but the fact is, until Purdue proves that it's capable of not just advancing, but advancing far in the bracket in March, this is going to be the storyline, and I've said that to you throughout the offseason.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Jim Gazzale joins us from Legal Sports Report. When Jim comes on our show each week, we're either going to do one of two things. I know this in advance. Either we're going to talk about a lot of states in the country who are doing very well in sports wagering, or we're going to play the other side where horse racing and wagering is falling apart. So the good news is we're doing the states doing well here. We're ending the show on a good note today. What's going on, Jim? Thanks for coming back here on the show. And listen, any news is good news as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we've got some positive news to share as we head into the weekend. Thanks for having me as always.
Yeah, well, when we're the one show, I guess that is doing that these days. Anywhere else you turn, there's some bad news going on. Bad news.
Right.
Okay, so let's start off with Massachusetts. And there's been, a lot of shifting around there. We know that, Barstool Sportsbook is no more. It became ESPN Bet. That's where it originated. Certainly DraftKings, I know in Massachusetts, has had different things happening there as well. We got some numbers in here from the final quarter of the year. And I can imagine with football season happening, despite the fact the Patriots have struggled quite a bit, people in that area certainly love to wager. What did the numbers show?
Yeah, another positive month to close out the year in Massachusetts. Record handle, $658.7 million bet there in December, and also record revenue. The sportsbooks won $62.2 million, their most profitable month there since sports wagering launched towards the beginning of the year. Total handle for the year, $4.97 billion, just shy of that $5 billion mark. And I feel like it's pretty safe to assume that they would have surpassed that $5 billion mark had they launched on January 1st, for example. As we know, that they didn't launch the online wagering there until the early parts of March ahead of the NCAA basketball tournament. So you factor in, a missed opportunity there with, the first 2.5 months of the year, left a little bit of money on the table, but still, all things considered, a very positive way to round out the year in Massachusetts. A couple of interesting notes, like you said in the lead in there, Craig. DraftKings, the hometown Boston-based sportsbook, they're number one there, as they have been from the start. And obviously, being based in the state's biggest city, you'd want to make a splash and kind of assert yourself, and they certainly did. Though I will say, what I found interesting over the last couple of months in Massachusetts, we've seen the handle share for DraftKings drop, albeit slightly. They still maintain about 50% of handle month over month there, but it has declined a little bit since September. If you go back to September, they had 58% of the mobile handle did DraftKings. October, 55%, November, 50%, and then in December to close out the year, 49%. So slowly kind of ticking downward there. And, of course, these markets can be a bit volatile from month to month. I don't know that there's necessarily a ton of information to be gleaned from that, though we did see, too, like you mentioned, ESPN Bet come into the market halfway through November, and what they did in December was a bit of a positive increase from what they did in November. Their handle share was up near 8%, up from about 6% in November. So again, like we've talked about, more records falling in certain states, and it'll be interesting too to see what sort of staying power ESPN Bet has as we get into the new year here. January, February, March, we might see some of those promo dollars wear out for them, and it'll be interesting to see if those customers do in fact stick around.
Yeah, no, it'll be fascinating stories all across the country. Massachusetts is one, New Jersey is another, and what I really find peculiar about this is that there was some talk, Jim, that when New York legalized sports betting, I believe 1.5, 2 years ago, that New Jersey, who got a head start, could potentially take a hit. I think we've seen a little bit of that, but really not enough to make a dent. New Jersey seems to be doing very well here, especially with the numbers from quarter four.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Craig. We did see that sort of growing and emerging New York market kind of have at least an initial negative impact on New Jersey. I believe New Jersey dealt with about 12 consecutive months of year-over-year handle declines. Though, as we've seen towards the end of 2023, that New Jersey market did regain a lot of its footing and actually put together a rather positive year in 2023. If you look at it, they were one of just 3 states, New Jersey, New York, and Ohio, that we have numbers for so far, full year statistics for 2023. Just one of 3 states so far to post $1 billion in sportsbook revenue. So certainly a positive for the operators there. In December, mobile handle, $1.28 billion, another strong month as they're, like I was mentioning, continuing to show those year-over-year handle increases towards the back half of 2023. And we have seen them regain that footing and rebound quite nicely. We did see ESPN Bet have its first full month of operations in New Jersey in December, and it was probably one of the states where the returns were lacking a bit. Just 3%, actually a little bit less, 2.5% of market revenue went the way of ESPN Bet. $3.3 million for ESPN Bet in New Jersey in December, which was, a fair bit less than we've seen in other states. So again, we don't get the promotional spending in New Jersey. The financial figures are quite limited there that we do get to see eyes on. So again, it'll be interesting to see how ESPN Bet progresses in New Jersey as we get into the NFL playoffs and of course, March Madness here on the horizon in the next couple of months.
Okay, and then as we close out, the flip side of a story like New York, New Jersey, apparently is Indiana and Kentucky, where Indiana, when they first opened up their retail sports books, it was a phenomenal story. We talked about it here. But now with Kentucky having retail sports betting going on, Jim, and I know you follow the state of Kentucky very closely, Indiana seems to be taking a little bit of a step back due to, I guess, them being just so close in proximity.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I've just personally been fascinated by the retail side of these two markets in the last couple of months. As the Kentucky retail market opened at the beginning of September, and we did see that have a pretty substantial impact on the brick and mortar sports books in Indiana. Now, the most popular one is in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, which sits on essentially both borders with Ohio and Kentucky. So when Ohio launched at the beginning of 2023 in January, we saw some declines, but it seemed like those declines really started to accelerate towards the end of last year when that Kentucky market opened up. So just kind of totaling numbers here, in 2022, between September and December, $48 million was bet at the sportsbook at the Hollywood Casino in Lawrenceburg. And then you compare that to the end of last year, over those same stretch of months, just $6.4 million was bet at that retail location, almost a 90% drop off over that section of months from 2022 to 2023. So significant drops on the retail side. The online side has been okay. It seems like the Indiana market is struggled a little bit when you look at it in the context of just, it seemed like every week I was coming on here with you, Craig, and talking about another record month of handle here, another record month of handle there. And Indiana's been steady. They do have that increased competition this year from Ohio, which launched in January. and then the online market in Kentucky, which launched at the end of September. But the Indiana market still continues to chug along, about flat, really, in overall handle from 2022 to 2023. When again we did see plenty of other states post some significant gains. Just to run through a couple real quick: Iowa was up 4%, Michigan was up around 2%, Pennsylvania 6%, New Jersey, like we just talked about, their handle was up about 13% year over year. So plenty more states to still report end of year figures. So we'll keep tracking those, and we'll see how everything shakes out here in the next couple of weeks.
All right, Jim. Well, thanks again for coming on. I know a big race here in my neck of the woods next week, the Pegasus. I know you'll be following that very closely. Thanks again for coming on the show, Jim, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks, Craig.
All right, Jim Gazzale joining us, LegalSportsReport.com, great website, and all of the content that they bring on our show, they have a lot more of it over Legal Sports Report. All right, coming up next, we dive into the 4 games of the divisional round. Warren Sharp has the Sharp Report with us next.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted them out. They still wanted them gone.
Mike Shula, you
Mike Shula
replacing
was
him?
a disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Last year, the Purdue Boilermakers upset by the 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. Is history going to repeat itself?
Purdue is capable of winning 6 games in the NCAA tournament, but the fact is, until Purdue proves that it's capable of not just advancing, but advancing far in the bracket in March, this is going to be the storyline. And I've said that to you throughout the offseason.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire on SportsGrid. It's Friday, and for the last time this NFL season, we've got 4 games this weekend. We go down to 2 next week, and then, of course, the last game left is the Super Bowl. It's time now for us to preview all of the games. It's time to bring in Warren Sharp for the Sharp Report. All right, we have Warren here with us, ready to break down the games. We've got 3 spreads out of the 4, 6 points or more. That is definitely different for the National Football League going into divisional round weekend. Hey, Warren, great to have you back here on NewsWire.
Happy to be here. Excited about this weekend because this is my favorite weekend of the year. Super Wild Card weekend is excellent, but those games weren't even all that competitive for the most part. This weekend historically has been my absolute favorite.
All right, well, let's get started because the NFL, of course, with these new playoff rules, makes the number 1 seed in a really nice position going into the weekend. And they're both going to play on Saturday, the Ravens and the 49ers. And the intrigue surrounding this game is as follows. You have 2 games of double-digit spreads, essentially. And maybe by Saturday it'll get to that by tomorrow. And let's start off with the AFC. We have the Ravens 9.5-point favorites over the Houston Texans. Warren, Houston with C.J. Stroud has been fantastic all season. Either they've been close or they've won games. And they're catching almost 10 in this one. The Ravens have blown a lot of teams out this year in the NFL, but Houston, in this position, do they have a chance, in your opinion, to keep the game close? I mean, maybe it's a lot to ask for an upset from Houston and Green Bay this weekend, but can they at least keep the game close, or is there a position anywhere else that you like on this game? All right, we'll get Warren back in just a minute. Warren, I think we got to refresh the audio there on the microphone. There could be a possibility, but again, Baltimore 9.5-point favorites over Houston this week. Warren, sorry we lost you there for a minute. We got you now.
Yeah, look, this game to me comes down to whether or not the Houston Texans can come out and have some ability to establish the run. Normally, I hate saying that, but when you're going up against this Baltimore Ravens team, they play with the 2nd most light boxes in the NFL, and teams tend to fall behind in games and then resort to the pass, which plays right into the hands of the Ravens because then they can use their sim pressures, confuse young quarterbacks, and their pass defense is one of the best in the NFL. However, their run defense ranks dead last since week 10 on early down running back runs, and so you've got to get some upside out of Devin Singletary in this game. He's got to have some more than just explosive run. Like, he could have an explosive run from time to time. They have to figure out a way to get a little bit of consistency here. The Ravens have struggled more this year against 21 personnel runs, which is a fullback out on the field. The Texans and the Ravens as well, but the Texans utilize that at a top 5 rate. So maybe they come out here, use a little bit of fullback runs with Singletary, have some success, can keep this game within arm's length, and that's what they need to do so that they can be balanced late in this game. That's one of the reasons, Craig, why some of these games in Baltimore, like when Seattle went there or like when Detroit went there, these games spiral out of control because their opponent has to resort. They're down by 10 points, 14 points at halftime. They just have to come out in the second half and throw the ball. And that's not going to get you back in the game against the Baltimore Ravens because if you're one-dimensional, they'll absolutely eat your lunch. On the other side, the biggest strength that I have for the Ravens in this one is the fact that they have the ability to throw underneath. The Houston Texans are one of the most aggressive deep shot teams in the NFL, the 3rd highest rate of throwing the ball down the field on early downs. With the weather, I'm a little bit worried. We're expecting some wins in this game. I don't know if those passes 15-plus yards down the field are going to have a lot of success. Now, the Ravens don't throw the ball nearly as deep on early downs as do the Houston Texans. When they do throw it, they're efficient, but they like to go underneath a little bit more, and I think they're going to have a lot of success in doing so against this Houston Texans defense, balance some things up. For that reason, I do like the Ravens in this game, but I'm not laying with the number for the full game. I am a little bit worried about the way that they start. How quickly do these teams come out of the bye week? It's been trouble for some of these teams over the last few years coming out of the bye week. I'm curious to see how Lamar Jackson looks in the first quarter. But I certainly think by the time we get to halftime, the Ravens will have established themselves as the superior team with a nice touchdown plus lead.
Okay, fair enough. Now, the second big spread of the weekend, or bigger spread, are the Green Bay Packers. The odds makers certainly are absolutely not buying that win in Dallas last week. I mean, if it was a close game and they won, I don't know. What would the line be? San Francisco minus 12? Well, I guess they're 9.5 going into this game this weekend. Again, the 49ers have been the NFL's best team from start to finish this year. They had a short blip in their schedule where they lost a couple of games in a row. They rebounded. McCaffrey's back. The total is 50.5. I guess we could just ask the same question here. Can Green Bay keep it close? Can they pull off a potential upset? They certainly look like the better offensive team going on the road this week in San Francisco. I guess what I'm trying to say is I trust the Packers offense a little bit more than I do Houston's if this game was to go back and forth. But then again, the Packers defense has been rough, Warren, for most of the season. I guess they finally got things right, but can they continue that in San Francisco?
I think they got lucky by going up against a head coach who doesn't have a good ability to game plan nor make in-game adjustments in Mike McCarthy. I think that's going to be different here when they face Kyle Shanahan. He's going to have a better idea of how to punch against Joe Barry's defense, which is a punch down in class, as well as make in-game adjustments and have some success. But if we start on the other side of the ball, like the Houston Texans, the only way I see them getting out to a lead in this one is if the Baltimore Ravens kind of come out a little slow and falter. I think the Green Bay Packers can actually start this game pretty quickly, potentially offensively. They are likely to start this game with the football because every single road game since week 11, when they've won the toss, they've requested the ball. And we also know that in home games, well, pretty much every game this year, the San Francisco 49ers have deferred if they win the toss. So the Packers, very good chance that they're going to be starting out with the football in this game. And they've been very aggressive on those opening drives when they've done so. And they've been able to put up points. They've been a lot better at creating explosive plays. Night and day difference between the first 9 weeks and what they've done since week 10 offensively. They're going to have some success running Aaron Jones outside zone. I'm kind of happy that A.J. Dillon's not up because they don't use him a lot outside zone. They use him a little bit more inside zone. Aaron Jones, you need to attack this 49ers defense utilizing outside zone. They're the worst defense in the NFL against running back runs from outside zone. And so maybe Green Bay has a little bit of success there, and then you can work some play action in off of that with all these receivers that they've got for Jordan Love. But what I like here, Craig, is actually the longest completion for Brock Purdy, over 39.5, and kind of settled on this one and realized this was the direction to look at when I tried to analyze which of these San Francisco 49ers receiving threats could have the bigger day, because we know that Deebo Samuel is outstanding against zone. And if the Packers sit back in some of those zones, there's going to be some shorter underneath targets to Deebo, and he absolutely destroys with yards after the catch on those passes. But if they play a little bit more traditional cover 3 zone, then we know that we're going to see a lot of success from Brandon Ayuk. In addition, if they get pressure on Brock Purdy, Ayuk is his number one target. So we know that the Packers like to blitz at a top 6 rate. And if they are able to get pressure with those blitzes, which I'm not so sure that they will be, but if they are, then there's going to be a lot of targets to Brandon Ayuk. Then you look at George Kittle. He plays a lot of tight end lined up in the slot. The Packers are number 30 defending tight ends in the slot. The Packers are number 30 overall defending tight ends, in fact. And so every single one of these receiving threats, like a different flavor, pick your poison, depending upon what coverage the defense is utilizing. Brock Purdy's going to have success, in my opinion, to all of them. Plus, they're going to be able to do what Dallas could not do, which is run the football. If the Packers do decide to just sit back in some too high and encourage the run with a lighter box, those runs aren't going to be from Tony Pollard. They're going to be from Christian McCaffrey, and they're going to have a lot more upside. As a result, I just find it difficult to imagine this Packers defense really figuring out a way to slow down Kyle Shanahan with multiple weeks to prepare for this game. I like Brock Purdy to go over 39.5 for his longest completion. And I think the Packers are going to need to start early so that they can utilize some more play action, but they're going to need to keep that pedal down all the way, because I do think at some point, probably in that second quarter, even if the Packers build a lead, that the 49ers are able to come back, retake that lead, and then continue to pour points on. I'm thinking that the 49ers punter might be resting on the bench a fair amount in this one.
49ers offense has been virtually unstoppable in every game that they've played, so a lot of points could be coming there. I think the same we could say probably for this game here between Tampa Bay and Detroit. And, you know, you had your video earlier in the show on this game, Warren, and I agree with you 100%. Now, I was on Detroit last week and was shocked that they did not cover. I watching the first half of that game, I'm like, wow, this is the best pick that I've made in the playoffs. Detroit is going to crush them, but they just like stopped. I couldn't believe it. Like the only Lions game all year where Ben Johnson wants to throw these little dink and dunks and outside screens. I couldn't believe it. They're 6-point favorites this week, 6.5 in some spots on BetMGM. Buccaneers at the Lions, total of 48.5. I'm seeing some 49s here, Warren. And look, if the Lions did learn their lesson, this thing's going way over. If they did not, Tampa Bay has a chance to win the game, I think.
Yeah, it's surprising. As aggressive as their head coach is and as creative as their offensive coordinator is, it just seems so odd to me that they go 60% pass on first down in the first half and run from a lot of 3-wide sets and gain over 5.5 yards per carry. And then in the second half, when they've got this lead, they're doing very little besides on first downs, running the ball from heavier personnel against loaded boxes, 86% loaded box rate from the Rams. And they're shocked that the first downs are gaining 0.6 yards per carry now. And all of a sudden they're facing third downs with 9.8 yards to go on average. And they're only converting, I think, around 20% of those. So none of this would be surprising if you go back and look at what their first down strategy was and what they changed from the first quarter. I'm a firm believer in these. You work all year, all off season to get to this point, to make it to the playoffs. You can't be changing up your game plan and go in this conservative mode at the end of the game against any of these offenses in the NFL, especially with the Detroit Lions defense, Craig, that is giving up the most 20-plus yard completions to wide receivers in the NFL this year. And for that reason, in part, I do like Baker Mayfield over his passing yards. I also took some alts there. I think the Bucs, they came out passing a lot last game. They're going to be needing to pass here because this is clear pass funnel defense. The Lions are great against the run. I don't think Rachaad White's going to have a ton of success if they hand him the football. They need to lean into that passing attack as long as they can protect Baker Mayfield and keep him upright. They've got the receiving weapons against a bad secondary to counterpunch a little bit here with the Detroit Lions and potentially play from behind, which is why I think Baker Mayfield is passing early and often.
All right, 1 minute to go here. Kansas City, Buffalo. Warren, anybody who comes on the show this week and says they know who's going to win, I kick them off the air. I won't do that to you. You can give me a pick if you want, but I mean, come on. I mean, who the heck knows with these two teams? They've been up and down all year long. This is, to me, the most unpredictable game of the playoffs going into Sunday night.
I agree. The good thing is we just saw this matchup in Arrowhead, and the Buffalo Bills won that game. Two edges based on the way the referee is going to call this game that might favor Kansas City. Number one, they don't call a lot of defensive holding this through. Sean Hockley going to get L'Jarius Sneed to be able to hold and limit Stephon Diggs to some extent early on in this game. Secondly, probably not as many offensive holding calls against the Kansas City Chiefs here. I think this game's a battle all the way to the end. Flip a coin, Craig.
Got the coin to flip. Thanks, Warren. Appreciate you coming on. We'll talk again on Monday. Thanks for appearing.
Thank you.
We'll be right back to wrap it up.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted him out. They still wanted him gone.
Mike Shula, you're replacing him?
A disaster. Dubas was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Last year, the Purdue Boilermakers upset by the 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. Is history going to repeat itself?
Purdue is capable of winning 6 games in the NCAA tournament, but the fact is, until Purdue proves that it's capable of not just advancing, but advancing far in the bracket in March, this is going to be the storyline. And I've said that to you throughout the offseason.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. NFL Network, by the way, reporting that it appears to be unlikely Mark Andrews plays for the Ravens tomorrow against the Houston Texans. So in any of your props you're doing this weekend, make sure you factor that in and follow us here. And also go on social media. You can learn about these things as well. Okay, Novak Djokovic has a great shot to win every tournament he plays in, including the Australian Open. And maybe the success for Djokovic this upcoming Australian Open, which is undergoing right now, would be a special tree. That's correct, a tree that Djokovic has been visiting with in Australia. Take a listen.
It is true. There's one particular tree that I've been having special relationship with, so to say, in the last 15 years. I love every corner of Botanical Gardens. I think that's incredible treasure for Melbourne to have such a beautiful park and nature in the middle of the city. But that particular tree, I cannot reveal which one. No, I try to keep it, discreet for myself when I'm there to have my own time. And I just like to ground myself and connect with that old friend. It's just, I got connected with that tree. I just liked it, and I liked its roots and the trunk and branches and everything. So I started climbing it years ago, and that's it. I have a connection.
Hey, whatever works, man, right? Whatever works for you there. I don't mean to get all sappy, but yeah, great. Congrats, Joker. Maybe he'll win the tournament. Maybe he'll accept the trophy by the tree. If that is the case. Listen, I'm not here to judge. I'm just telling stories on NewsWire. That'll do it for our show. Thanks to Warren Sharp for coming on, also Gilbert McGregor, and of course, thanks to our friends from Legal Sports Report, including Jim Gazzale, our associate producer Michael Cohen, our producer Sam Yarnell. I'm Craig Mish. I'll see you tomorrow morning for Fantasy Sports Today. If fantasy is not your thing and this show is, that's great too. See you back here Monday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, as we recap the NFL here on NewsWire. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you then.